Defense Updates has reached more than 150,000 subscribers. We're genuinely thankful to our viewers. You keep us going. We don't dilute your video watching experience in this channel with sponsored products. If you like what we're doing, kindly support us on Patreon. www.patreon.com/defenseupdates. The Trump administration has approved a plan to provide lethal weapons to Ukraine, a long-awaited move that deepens America's involvement in the military conflict and may further strain relations with Russia. Moscow responded angrily on Saturday. The new arms include American-made Javelin anti-tank missiles, U.S. officials said on Friday. Ukraine has long sought to boost its defenses against Russian-backed separatists armed with tanks that have rolled through eastern Ukraine during violence that's killed more than 10,000 since 2014. Previously, the U.S. had provided Ukraine with support equipment and training and has let private companies sell some small arms like rifles. The officials describing the plan weren't authorized to discuss it publicly and demanded anonymity. The move is likely to become another sore point between Washington and Moscow as President Donald Trump contends with ongoing questions about whether he's too hesitant to confront the Kremlin. Ukraine accuses Russia of sending the tanks, and the U.S. says Moscow is arming, training, and fighting alongside the separatists. In this video, Defense Updates analyzes the impact of the U.S. providing Javelin anti-tank missiles to Ukraine against Russia.
Number 5.
The intensified support for Ukraine's military also comes amid early discussions about sending UN peacekeepers to eastern Ukraine to improve security conditions not only for Ukrainians but for monitors from the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe who are on the ground. The US and other nations were cautiously optimistic when Russian President Vladimir Putin proposed to send in peacekeepers, but there are major disagreements about how and where the peacekeepers would operate, especially about whether they'd be deployed only on the line of conflict between separatists and the government. The US and Ukraine want peacekeepers deployed throughout these separatist-controlled regions stretching to the Ukraine-Russian border. By approving a plan to provide lethal weapons to Ukraine, the Trump administration could see it as providing leverage in these negotiations. Trump had been considering the plan for some time after the State Department and the Pentagon signed off earlier this year. President Barack Obama also considered sending lethal weapons to Ukraine, but left office without doing so.
Number 4.
The FGM-148 Javelin is an American man-portable fire-and-forget anti-tank missile fielded to replace the M47 Dragon anti-tank missile in U.S. service. It uses an automatic infrared guidance that allows the user to seek cover immediately after launch, as opposed to wired-guided systems like the Dragon, where the user has to actively guide the weapon throughout the engagement. It's manufactured by Raytheon and Lockheed Martin.
Number 3.
The Javelin's high-explosive anti-tank heat warhead is capable of defeating modern tanks by attacking them from above where armor is generally thinner, and is also useful against fortifications in a direct attack flight. The tandem warhead is fitted with two shaped charges, a precursor warhead to detonate any explosive reactive armor, and a primary warhead to penetrate base armor. It has a range of 4.75 kilometers, or around 3 miles.
Number 2.
The State Department, responsible for overseeing foreign military sales, would not confirm that anti-tank missiles or other lethal weapons would be sent. But in a statement late Friday, State Department spokeswoman Heather Nauert said the U.S. had decided to provide enhanced defensive capabilities to help Ukraine build its military long-term, defend its sovereignty, and deter further aggression. U.S. assistance is entirely defensive in nature, and as we have always said, Ukraine is a sovereign country and has a right to defend itself, Nauert said. The White House's National Security Council declined to comment. In thanking the U.S. for its support, Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko addressed the concerns over how the weapons would be used. American weapons in the hands of Ukrainian soldiers are not for an offensive, but for a decisive rebuff of the aggressor, the protection of Ukrainian soldiers and civilians, as well as for effective self-defense, he wrote on Facebook. It's also a transatlantic vaccination against the Russian virus of aggression. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Rybakov said the U.S. decision will only make the conflict more deadly and suggested that Russia could be forced to respond. Rybakov said in a statement, "U.S. is not a mediator, it's an accomplice in fueling the war."
Number 1.
Although the portable Javelin anti-tank missiles can kill, proponents for granting them to Ukraine have long argued they are considered defensive because the Ukrainians would use them to defend their territory and deter the Russians, not to attack a foreign country or seize new territory. Under law, the State Department must tell Congress of planned foreign military sales, triggering a review period in which lawmakers can act to stop the sale. It was unclear whether the administration had formally notified Congress, but lawmakers aren't likely to try to block it, given that Democrats and Republicans alike have long called on the government to take the step. The move comes as the United States and European nations struggle to break a long logjam in the Ukraine-Russia conflict that erupted 3 years ago when fighting broke out between Russian-backed separatists and government troops in the east. France, Russia, and Germany brokered a peace arrangement in 2015 that's lowered violence but not stopped it. In recent days, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has warned that violence is up about 60% this year. In Europe earlier this month, Tillerson called Russia's involvement the biggest tension point between the former Cold War rivals. It stands as the single most difficult obstacle to us denormalizing the relationship with Russia, which we badly would like to do, Tillerson said. The United States, under Obama, also imposed sanctions on Russia for its invasion and annexation of Crimea. The Trump administration has insisted those sanctions will stay in place until Moscow gives up the Crimean Peninsula. Sending lethal weapons to Ukraine creates the troubling possibility that American arms could kill Russian soldiers, a situation that could thrust the two nuclear-armed nations closer to direct confrontation. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this. Hit the like button if you find the video interesting, and kindly provide your feedback in the comment section. This will help us improve.